Right, number 4. I wonder if we'll finish in this one or the next one. We'll see what happens. Right, I'm moving to the next slide. This one's called Courtly Love, related to chivalry. Again, as you see, the troubadours, the mini singers and jongleurs are also espousing this. It's linked to the previous slide. Again, we have the mix of the, if you like, the basic German, the erotic desire. The man and the woman desire one another at the fundamental physical level. The Christian overlay is true love involves some sort of spiritual bond. Obviously, with the sacrament of marriage, it being a contract between a man and a woman before God. But beyond that, it is a linking of two spirits. Again, there is that element in the Arab poetry that they picked up through Spain. The Arabs have picked that up a lot from the Persians, whom they conquered back in the 7th century. So from Persia, through the Arabs, through Spain, to Europe. That spiritual bond, I think, ancient roots. But the Christian faith certainly picking up on that, definitely. Reading the New Testament, Paul especially, condemning lust, condemning fornication. So the church trying to make marriage this sacramental relationship, something spiritual between the two humans, above the basic erotic desire. And that's what these songs are often about, this true love. Yes, we have perhaps the invention of love. Although it's interesting, because a lot of the time this courting, this love affair, is forbidden. She is the queen, like Lancelot and Guinevere, for example, right? She is the queen, he is the king's loyal knight, and yet they love one another. It's unrequited, it should be. And we see that a lot. So it complicates. How do you do that? And the reason you're doing that sometimes is because, remember, the woman in at least the knightly and noble classes is the one running the castle. The knight is running his lands and going off elsewhere. The woman is running the castle. There are knights in the castle. The knights who are the vassals of the Lord and who sometimes are his household knights. They live in the castle at least a certain amount of time. And there's this woman who's often young. The noble, they get married fairly young in the nobility, political marriages and so forth, generate an heir quickly. So you might have the knights and the lady of the household, young, same age. The noble who runs the household could be absent. And so what you have to do here is, I think this courtly love is a way of saying, okay, we recognize the knight's going to have a crush on the lady. And so what he can do is do this courtly love thing. You can show you love her, sing songs to her, but don't touch her, right? Don't fulfill on it. So this courtly love allows for this acknowledgement of these tensions and sort of try and make it into a good thing. Just channel it. If you really have to deal with the basic physical demands, there's plenty of peasant girls to deal with. Okay? But it is about love, even if it is, when you do have the lovers who can get together. And that's a fascinating transmission. It elevates women to some extent. They're not just chips in a marriage deal. They're someone who loves and can be loved. And that links back to good old Mary, right? Mary, the compassionate mother of God. Mary, the queen who intervenes with God on your behalf to get mercy. The Mariology, this concept of loving Mary, is almost like loving the countess or duchess or the queen. So it links to that idea of that appreciation of the kindly woman whom you love and admire and who intercedes on your behalf. It's a very positive, I don't want to go too far, but it's a pretty positive image of women. It puts them in a very, this motherly, caring, compassionate role, a creature to be wooed, but or respected from afar. But it is a positive role. You love Mary, you love the woman of the household, and you even have the woman that you love and marry through love. A nice aspect. And then worked through. So we'll sort of summarize that in the next slide. Literature, which essentially the literature, the sculpture, the art, it's all the ars moderna or ars nova, sometimes called the new or modern art. The people in the Middle Ages recognized that the Greeks and Romans were the ancients and we are the moderns. They felt the ancients were perhaps superior, just great achievements. It's been what, 500, 600, 700, 800 years since the Germans took over the Romans, but they still are trying to say, wow, the Romans are awesome, we want to be like them. Even 800 years later with their own civilizations, we're still trying to be Roman. So they're the ancients, we're the moderns, we're trying to emulate them. But at the same time, to quote one philosopher, we are going beyond. We are moving forward. As one philosopher said, we're dwarves riding on the shoulders of giants. So they respect the ancients as being great, but we are on top and are moving forward. Perhaps not far, and don't give themselves enough credit, but we are the moderns. We're different. So the ars moderna or ars nova, recognized through plays mostly, which again start with the church, but you will get some other street plays. Groups called mummers, street players, street entertainers. Lyric poetry, often that is to do with the chivalry or courtly love. The romances, which are descendants of the epics, the great stories. But the interesting thing, and I've got Fablio here listed on this slide. Today we separate high culture, low culture. The way we speak, the way things are presented. A punk rock song is low culture, right? A Mozart symphony is considered high culture. Swearing is low culture. Speaking proper, high culture. Less of a mix there. Certainly the upper classes look down on the peasants as ignorant and piggish and half animal. But in terms of the culture, it's mixed. You read Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, you have Fablio mixed in with romances, mixed in with all sorts. You can tell the dirty joke alongside Shakespeare, even, right? 17th century, you read Shakespeare, he's jumping back and forth between serious and what we think is silly or something. They're not so separated out as we do now. A Fablio is a story which tells a moral tale, often criticizing the clergy when they're too worldly, or criticizing peasants or merchants or other classes. So there's a moral story, but they're often quite filthy and violent sometimes. But it fits in. It's with this mix. After all, one moment you could be doing courtly love, the next moment you're all watching a bear baiting fight. Separation we sometimes have confusion over. Then the same, I listed the performers at the bottom, the troubadours, right, who could be anybody up to a king. And at the other end I've got Goliards, who are wandering students, often singing drinking songs. Or Monmouth street players, or jongleurs, professional artists. You see the gamut that's there, both in the performers and in the from Fabio to King Arthur. Also shared as sermons in the church is a form of literature. Psalters. A psalter is a book with later often called books of hours, in which you have little prayers, little things that you go through the various portions of the day to work in yourself. It's for an individual who can read and write, which means someone of relative wealth, but something religious. A speculum principi, for example, Mirror of the Prince, Advice to Princes. Florilegium are interesting. They are similar to Psalters and Books of Hours. Books of Hours and Psalters are, work your way through the religious cycle of the day, the week, the year. And there's these handy little quotes and things. A Florilegium is more random. This is a cool passage. I'm going to copy it into my book. Take a notebook and just write quotes that you find. People do it now, I think. A journal, if you like. But you're writing quotes down from something you've read, something you've heard, anything. It's just this wonderful collection of things. And those are very individualized. So we're finding a lot going on. I think I have there pictures. The next slide just gives you an idea of one of the game. We don't credit the Middle Ages with painting, but certainly the illustrations in books are impressive. The great, beautifully coloured page margins and the illustrated letters, the illustrations themselves, again not perspective but very colourful, very beautiful. And perhaps my favourite, and I use this one a lot, is this one at the bottom from the Bible of the God creating the cosmos. And this is my favourite idea. Notice this isn't a God that's like, I'm creating and do whatever, right? If you look, he's using a measuring compass, geometer's compass. He's measuring. When he creates the universe, he's measuring it. He's creating rules, laws, measurements. Makes the universe measurable. Such a key concept. It's not an arbitrary God. Here's the universe and this will happen, and today I'm going to make Pluto go that direction. Right, and today I'll reverse gravity. It's, no, I've made laws. I've made things that are measurable. And so our philosophers can measure. How did God do this? If I measure it, I know creation. Wonderful design. We'll get more into that when we get to philosophy. Looks like I'm going to have to do one last shorter bit for the last slide.